Well, our guest today on Absolutely Famous is former Marlborough and King Country loose forward Greg Brimble from the beautiful New South Wales coastal town of Nowra. Brims, how's the Jayco caravan business going down south?
Yeah, going great guns, Johnny, and good afternoon. Thanks for having me on again, mate. No, business is going good. The new 2023 Jayco range is out. If I can just put a little plug in,
Absolutely.
if anybody's interested, give me a bell. But we've got other things to talk about, I think, Johnny.
Yeah, well, the rugby, of course, Super Rugby, some things never change. Brims, the Crusaders, despite a horrendous injury toll, I think they're just about a full team out injured at the moment, but they still got the job done against the Reds, and our Marlborough mate Leon McDonald will be pulling the rest of it, what's left of his hair, out up north. The Blues just can't get the bloody ball over the line, can't get it down.
Well, I was watching. It's funny you should say that, and I just want to see if I can pull up this photograph that I took last night, Johnny, because I was watching the breakdown last night, the rugby breakdown in New Zealand, and some of the stats from that game was from the Blues and Chiefs game was. I didn't realise it how one-sided it was, with the stats. The Chiefs, of course, won that game 20 points to 13, but the Blues had 65% territory during that game. They visited the opposition 10 times as opposed to 6. They had possession for 63% of the possession. And conceded only 7 penalties against the Chiefs, 14, but lost the game. I mean, yeah, as you say, Leon would be, he'd be pretty, and he looked pretty upset as well at the end of the game, didn't he?
Yeah, well, he did. I felt for him because his game drivers aren't doing. I mean, Beauden Barrett had a horrendous game at first five. What the heck's happened to him? He stopped running. He's just these aimless bloody kicks, and I don't know what's going on there.
Well, yeah, and they touched on that last night on the breakdown as well. And Mills Muliaina, and he'd know he's pretty close to what's going on in those circles still. And he said that Beauden Barrett just seems to have lost some confidence, because we all know what a fantastic player Beauden Barrett is. And he's a match winner and former world player of the year, but he's out of sorts at the moment, and there was discussion that they might be better off playing him at fullback and bringing Stephen Perifetta into the first 5'8" position for the Blues. But that will be a decision for Leon to make, and I'm sure Leon's all over that. But yeah, he'd be pretty angry with that, mate. They're inability to convert all of that possession and territory advantage into points is disturbing for the Blues, but it's also disturbing for New Zealand rugby as well, John.
I agree, and Beauden Barrett to me is at the root of an issue that Coach Ian Foster's got to address. Whether he does or not, I don't know. That we've got a lot of players starting on the downside of their career. They've been around a long time, and I noticed Muliaina mentioned Beauden Barrett should go to fullback for the All Blacks. He doesn't even mention the fact that Will Jordan's so far ahead of Beauden Barrett nowadays as a fullback, and it flabbergasted me that he didn't even mention Will Jordan, who, if he gets back playing, will be my number one pick.
Well, I expect we'll talk about that, because I agree with you 100%, and I think if we are all New Zealand are any chance of winning the Rugby World Cup, we need a fully fit Will Jordan on the field, and I believe we need him at fullback.
Yeah, no question about that at all. And we've got players, we've listed players. You can, they stand out. Those guys who are really putting their name forward, and those like Beauden Barrett who are battling at the moment. Lester Fainga'anuku, the Crusaders winger, he is absolutely built for knockout Test World Cup rugby, in my view.
Yeah, he is, and he's equal first try scorer in Super Rugby this year. I think seven tries, and he has really put his hand up, and it's fortunate that he has, because Sevu Reece is out for the year, as you've said already. So we're not going to have him at the Rugby World Cup. But what a time for Leicester to come into some really top form, and we've all known what he's been capable of for a long time, playing for the mighty Marco and for the Crusaders, and also his recent All Black debut. He's a very capable player, and he's in some red hot form at the moment, isn't he? And I think along with Mark Talia, they've really stuck their hands up for those wing positions in the All Blacks.
They certainly have. Another pleasing thing for me, Brims, on the weekend was to see Follow Fakatava. He only played a cameo role, but just the time he was on the field, he made a couple of runs, set up tries, and the young fella at the Crusaders, another Marco man, Noah Holtham from the New Zealand under-20 team, he looks a real prospect. Again, they challenged the defence by running, and it's just heartening to see the halfbacks having a go again.
Well, they did, and there's a wealth of talent, isn't there, at halfback in New Zealand at the moment. And I mean, we've got experience, we've got youth coming through, we've got a level of exuberance and excitement around that position at the moment. And Nuggy Aaron Smith's going to be our number one halfback at the Rugby World Cup, but let me tell you, aren't they putting their hand up for the number 2 and 3 spots? Because they'll take 3 halfbacks. But look, I've got Aaron Smith as my number one halfback, and Brad Weber, who's been a fantastic leader for the Chiefs so far this year. I mean, he's been fantastic, Brad Weber. He really has. He would be my number 2 halfback at the moment. And I've actually got Cam Roydgard and Finlay Christie bracketed as my number 3 halfback, but that leaves out the likes of TJ Perenara and Folau Fakatava, as well as the up and coming Cortez Rantama. So isn't there some wonderful talent coming through there? And that's not to mention a whole lot of other blokes that are they're competing at that top level in some pretty good form as well.
Yeah, quite agree. Of course, the Beauden Barrett conundrum strikes again at first 5. I mean, Damian McKenzie, to me, the out-and-out form, he's come back from Japan an even better player than he was. He really looks as though he's controlling the ship beautifully from first 5. And of course, it's going to be pretty hard to leave him out. And Richie Mo'unga.
Well, he is, and so many players come back from Japan as well, don't they? Because the competition over there isn't as hard and demanding. They come back and they seem to have lost their edge because it's not as competitive in Japan week in and week out. But Damian McKenzie has come back a better player than he ever was before, and he has been instrumental in the Chiefs' run so far, unbeaten run so far this year, and isn't he in some dynamic form? I believe Richie Mo'unga is probably still our starting first 5'8", but I would love to see Damian McKenzie coming on with 30, 35 minutes to go, and seeing what he can do, and opening up those defences, because he is just a brilliant player. And there was a magnificent little cameo interview with him last night, Anton Leonard-Brown and Damian McKenzie, and it was a real good insight into what a great young man he is, and in the 100 games he's played for the Chiefs so far as well.
Yeah, and the other thing, he's banging goals over from halfway, so he's a potent weapon there. Between him and Geordie Barrett, the opposition have sort of, it's something for them to worry about.
Well, there is too, because I don't know if it was I think it was the weekend before, Richie Mo'unga missed some real sitters in that game, and he's not in great kicking form at the moment, but Damon McKenzie seems to have that air of confidence about him at the moment, and he can't miss from anywhere. And like you say, we've got that Reece Hodge type player in Geordie Barrett who can just knock them over from anywhere. So yeah, we've got that covered fairly well. But Damian McKenzie, we have to get Damian McKenzie on the field in 2023 Rugby World Cup. He has to have time on the field.
I totally agree. And at the moment, as you alluded to, he'd be my starting first five at the moment. I know it's early days, but and what Ian Foster and co do, I don't know. It was pleasing to me, speaking about Ian Foster, head coach, and his assistants, that they were over in the Six Nations watching those games live. They would have picked up a lot of information and just about how well, especially the two top sides, Ireland and France, are going, and how cemented their combinations are.
Well, I reckon they would have been shivering like a cat shit in razor blades, mate, over there watching some of those Six Nations games, because the level of rugby in the Northern Hemisphere, and I messaged you the other day about this as well, John, just the balance of power has swung back to the Northern Hemisphere now, and the Six Nations, that was as good a rugby football tournament as you could wish to see anywhere. The standard of rugby was phenomenal, and the European club championships going on as well. That level of rugby there has been very, very good. And don't get me on a roll, but I think losing South Africa to the South African teams to Super Rugby has been to the detriment of both New Zealand and Australian rugby, because we're not getting those really hard physical hit-outs that you traditionally get against those South African teams, and they're the real measure of how tough you are and how good you're playing. Is playing against South Africa, in my opinion. That's the benchmark, South Africa, and I think we've suffered. Our game has suffered in the Southern Hemisphere by not having those teams there, John, and it certainly helped to strengthen the Northern Hemisphere competitions.
I totally agree. I mean, Super Rugby was once the competition in the world, but to me now it's a very much an inferior product. You mentioned with the South Africans gone, All Blacks having to be rested from games, the Brumbies coming over to Christchurch, leaving 8 of their best players behind. I mean, if they're not going to take it seriously, then I'm not.
No, that's right. And I mean, it's always, leading into a Rugby World Cup, there's these protocols that they have where players have got to be rested, and the New Zealand Union has come out and said that I think it's between rounds 5, 6 and 7, I think, that all your international players need to have had a rest at some stage. So, it might be a little bit different this year, but how disappointing to see a team like the Brumbies, who are head and shoulders above the rest of the Australian state teams. I mean, they're genuine contenders for the Super Rugby title this year. But how disappointing to see them turn up in Christchurch with effectively a B team, which should have been one of the games of the competition, the Brumbies and the Crusaders, but unfortunately wasn't.
Yeah, you mentioned the All Blacks resting policy. It's an absolute load of rubbish as far as I'm concerned. I mean, everybody's different, every athlete's different, and you tell me that Ethan Blackadder wants to rest at any stage, forwards like him, and surely the Super Rugby coaches have got enough intelligence to know when their players need resting.
Well, you would think so, but like I say, the being a Rugby World Cup year, I think that shines a slightly different light on it. And I mean, if there's a positive, it's that the franchises are in communication with the national body, and so there's some balance and coordination going on there. But yeah, look, I agree with you, mate. It's I mean, when I was playing, there's no way in the world as a player, you don't want to be rested.
No.
You don't want to, and you want to be playing, and you want to be testing yourself against the best teams as well. That's just what you want to do as a rugby player. You want to play rugby. You just want to play rugby. You don't want to be sitting on the bench. You don't want to be rested or anything like that. And I couldn't imagine it being too much different nowadays as a young player. And what a great example, Ethan Blackadder. Yeah, imagine telling Ethan Blackadder, I'm resting you this weekend. He'd punch you in the face. Oh, and rightly so. I wouldn't want to tell him. I'd sort of send him an email or something.
Yeah, from a great difference. But isn't it ironic, Brims, that with this ridiculous rest thing going on, we've got record numbers of injuries for most of the teams. I mean, to me, that shoots the whole idea down right there. You've got to be battle hardened. It's like runners. You run. The more you run, the better at it you get.
Yeah, and look, there's some are saying that the changes to the rules have a bit to do with it, but I don't buy into that. I mean, the ball is in play for more times now. I think the rule changes actually have been pretty good in speeding up the game. The ball's in play a lot more often. There's more tries being scored now than in the previous couple of seasons. But yeah, look, mate, I agree with you. It's all a bit weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's I'll go back to the South Africans not being in there. They harden you up. Nothing hardens you up like smashing your head against some of those big South African forwards, and they test you, and you got to be tough. I don't know how you could lift yourself, too much to play against the Rebels or the Force or even the Waratahs at the moment. They're not exactly fearsome, are they? And I say that with due respect to those guys that are playing, because they're a lot more fearsome than I am and I ever was. But I just don't get some of it, mate.
No. On the plus side for the Super Rugby, Brims, there were some really exciting games on the weekend, and hats off to the people of Palmerston North for packing out the ground there. What a breath of fresh air to see a ground pretty much full for what turned out to be a great match between the Western Force and the Hurricanes.
Yeah, well, isn't it good? I mean, the Manawatu is traditionally a rugby nursery as well. I mean, with the university up there as well, and their club competition. I mean, they've had some wonderful players. The likes of Mark Shaw and Frank Oliver, and them coming out of the Manawatu. So it's good to see. It's good to see those games going to the regions, and as it is, games being taken to Lansdowne Park and Blenheim, and games to Rugby Park and Invercargill and that as well. It's great to see those games being taken to the regions and that. But it's a funny old world, our rugby world at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. Of course, as you say, it's World Cup year, so things are always a little bit different. I'm already excited. Having the fact that I'm going there physically to watch it is a pretty exciting prospect, really. And we'll get into the World Cup closer to the time, but it really is a wide open competition, isn't it, at the moment?
Yes, it is. I think it is, and I think what's in New Zealand's favour at the moment is that nobody's expecting them to win, which is good. And New Zealanders traditionally expect New Zealand to win every World Cup. I don't think there's anyone in New Zealand at the moment that's confident that the All Blacks are going to win the World Cup. So the pressure's off the players. That level of expectation is off them. But I tell you what, there's a bloody ton of expectation on the French and the Irish at the moment. And if they don't perform, geez, I tell you what, there'll be some dramas in Paris and in Dublin, they'll be playing up like unregistered kelpies, I reckon. There, geez.
Exciting prospects. Well,
Yeah.
Brims, great to chat as always, and I'm off to the land of the long white cloud, Aotearoa, New Zealand, on Thursday this week, so for a family get-together. So I'm looking forward to chatting to a few Kiwis living back in New Zealand, getting their thoughts on rugby as well.
Yeah, well, I was back there a couple of weeks ago, John. The place hasn't changed much, but it's beautiful, isn't it? Flying back into Aotearoa, as you say, and give my regards to the people there. The rugby season's just starting to get, the club season's starting to get into a bit of a swing, I think, and that. And you'll enjoy it, mate. I hope you and Cheryl have a fantastic trip.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Brims. Always value your expertise. Have a great week.
Good on you. You too, mate. Thanks for having us. Cheers.